This week, my game went from a boring, empty map with hardly any gameplay to a full playable prototype. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Nerdy Snail, and for the past few years, I've been working on a few different game dev projects. All of this is working towards my goal of releasing a commercial game before I graduate from high school. A couple of weeks ago, I started on a new project, a cyberliminal horror game, which I have named Memory Bank. This week, I have made a ton of progress on this game, and here's how it went. On the first day, I started by making a list of everything that needed to be done. I wrote down how I wanted the level to look in the end and figured out what I would need to do in order to make that happen. I decided that in order to escape level 1, the player would need to find a computer that works amidst all of the broken ones, find a hard drive to put in that computer, find the password, find the admin pin, and run a certain executable in the computer that would unlock the exit door. On top of this, because of the theme of the game to have some sort of computer trying to gain trust and power by the player, I added this little pop-up asking you to help it connect some displays. This is optional, but why wouldn't you want to help the poor computer out? All of this resulted in these tasks for me to do. First, I would start by fixing the lighting and improving the TVs. Now for the fun stuff. I'll add some sort of entity, an interact system, inventory system, and dialogue system. Then I'll add some items for the player to interact with and make the computer pop up this window and make it function. Last, I'll add the little side quest thing and have some people playtest the game to finish the week up. Starting with the lighting, it was way too dark and it was hard to see in the level. I went into the blueprint and just increased the intensity of the light source. Now they light up a lot more area and it's easier to navigate the level. After running through the level a few times, I noticed a ton of lag and realized it was the TVs causing it. The way I made the TVs was to have a media file source, run it through a media player, and get the media texture, and make that into material to add to the screens of each TV model. But I had like 7 different media files, which each had to be opened and loaded with the level, which of course uses a lot of resources. So, to fix this, I chose my 4 favorite videos and made them into one single video, with one type in each corner. Then I did the usual, but instead I made 4 materials out of 1 media texture. That way the game only has to open 1 media file instead of 7. But that still left me with the task of assigning the 4 materials to each TV, and I was not about to spend hours going through hundreds of TVs to do this. So instead, I just turned both variations into a blueprint class and had them randomly choose one of the 4 materials on construct. Then all I had to do was replace each mesh I had already placed with the blueprint actor, and that's much better. Now that the level was more prepared, I decided I wanted to add an entity so the player doesn't get lonely. When designing him, I didn't want him to be hostile towards the player like in a lot of other games, so I decided to aim for him to just wander around the level and avoid the player instead, so the player would occasionally catch a glimpse of him. I started by making the basic wandering AI for him, and ran into this funny moment when his animations weren't working. After fixing that and giving him a safe area to roam, I started making the logic for him to avoid the player. Basically, I gave him a pawn sensing component and made an event that tells him what to do if he sees the player. In this case, he'll generate about 10 random points in his navigable area, choose the one that's farthest from the player, and run to it. But this still lets the player catch up and possibly corner him, so I gave him the ability to panic and teleport to the farthest safe location if the player gets within a certain distance. So this is how he turned out. This was my first time making any sort of NPC AI, so I had a lot to learn, but I'm pretty happy with how he turned out. Put your name suggestions for him in the comments. After finishing this, I started on the interact system and the inventory system. I made an interface to attach to anything interactable and set up a line trace that detects and runs a function anytime it hits something within the interface. The first function I made was to show or hide this interact icon. The second was for actually interacting with the object. I made a new enhanced input action for the key E and had it run a line trace, check for the interact interface, and run the interact function. What this function does varies between objects. Some objects will be something the player interacts with and can use to do something else, like this computer. Most objects will be items the player can pick up and add to their inventory, which I started on next. I was going to just copy the inventory system from a different project to save time, but I realized I made the interact system differently in this project, so I had to change some things to make the UI work with the new system. Finally, I got the items to add to an array and show up in this little inventory window. I'll improve it later and add more advanced features, but for now the basic inventory works, so I'll just have to ignore the horrendous UI design for a while. Before making the items to interact with and finally making the actual gameplay, I quickly made the dialogue system to give the player hints and help if they are stuck. Then I started by gathering a few models for the items to place around the map. Now I need to program what happens when the player interacts with the computer. First, it'll check if you have the hard drive to run the computer and tell you to get it if you don't. But if you do, a window will pop up and ask you to put in the password, which can be found written in a note somewhere in the level. Putting in the correct password will take you to this main screen with 2 apps that you can run. Oh, and what's this? A pop-up. It can't hurt to do what it says, right? You just need to run around and turn on 5 of these computers and run this, and good job, you helped the poor computer out. Then, when you're ready to finally exit the level, just run this .exe file, input the admin code that you found earlier, and now the door opens. So this is how the level 1 prototype turned out. I'll be working on level 2 over the next week, so subscribe if you want to see that. Thanks for watching and have a great day.